Welcome to the Total Harmonics Distortion channel. Today we're going to take a look at the Valetron GP-50 guitar pedal. I bought this around Christmas time and it has an interesting set of features. It's basically a guitar pedal. It's also an audio interface. It has a internal battery, so when the power goes off, it gives me something to do when the power goes off a lot around here. So it has an interesting set of features. It also does neuro amp models and stuff like that. We'll get more into that later. IR cabinet. Let's take a look at the effects chain real quick. Basically, it's a noise reduction followed by a preamp, followed by a distortion pedal. And you can't really change the order of these effects. The NS, that's the amp modeler, and then there's amp and a cab model. EQ followed by modulation, delay, and a reverb, and then an expression pedal. This also has MIDI 2 on it. It has an interesting set of features for $120. So, yeah, I picked one up around Christmas time. I don't know, a little splurge for me because money's tight. But anyways, let's go on to the analyzer. All right, put it back in the color mode. The first thing I notice is if you plug this thing into USB, this happens. Now, when I first got it, I plugged it into USB and I ran some tests and stuff like that, figuring it would charge from USB, but it didn't. But anyways, I'll plug in the USB cable. And look, it's super noisy. So it's noisy and it doesn't charge. So I have it powered up by a 9-volt adapter, which works just fine. And it does work on battery too. But yeah, I guess that's a little better. But still, if you want it to do that, and it all turned off, ain't that fun? Kind of a thing. But anyways, the takeaway is if you want to use this thing, don't plug it into USB because it makes it a whole bunch noisier. Just for reference, this is the audio interface. It's the Motu M4. A pretty clean interface all in all. A little quirky like everything else, but anyways, yeah. First, let's take an empty preset. That's a good one. And nothing's turned on. I guess we could start with an EQ kind of a thing. So let's turn on the EQ, which is probably the easiest thing. We'll use MLS for this. There's a couple different versions of everything. Basically, everything's been multi-threaded now, so everything just runs a little faster. I'm noticing a little distortion there. That's that little noise on there. We'll just drop it until it cleans up. Right about there. I mean, around negative 24 dB. It's a guitar interface, so it wants a pretty quiet signal. So, yeah, okay, whatever. I can deal with that. A little roll off on the bass. Guitar doesn't go much below 100 hertz, so yeah, we'll just kind of move that over here because I don't really care much about that. And this is everything above. So the audio interface is in blue, and it's 192 kilohertz, so that goes there. But anyways, on to the EQ. Got 400 dB. That's matching up. It looks like plus 12 dB. Yeah, that's all cool. Drop it there. So yeah, looks like the frequencies are correct. It's graphic EQ pedal, yeah. It does the graphic EQ thing. So 120 hertz. Well, actually, I'm gonna have to squeeze this back for a little bit. That's a peaking filter, which is weird because usually you'd use a shelf. The shelf goes all the way across. It would basically go all the way out to here, be flat to there, but this is just a peaky thing. So let's look at the high frequencies. You also get 1.6 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz, which is also peaky, not shelvy. But yeah, okay. Yeah, sometimes I'll use a graphic EQ or a parametric EQ to kind of do the speaker sim thing, but I guess you got a cab for that. So let's turn that off and go over to the cab and turn the cab on. So yeah, you have various cabs, typical IR stuff. I'll do on this is basically do a measurement. What I do is I take an impulse response. I basically make a special IR that basically makes a pulse every millisecond, a big pulse followed by 9 small pulses followed by a big pulse followed by 9 And I do that for a second just to see how long these things can impulse response for, and that's way down here. So these are IR. It should be this one. All right, let me zoom out a little bit. That's weird. Not what I was expecting. Oh, okay, okay. It's a triggering thing. It's just such a weird thing. Um, I guess we could do this in harmonic analysis. Okay, let me just clean up some stuff here that you don't want to really see. There we go. So this is the impulse response for the pedal right now. So yeah, it looks like it takes somewhere between 12 and 13 milliseconds of impulse response time. That's, I don't know, it's like 512, 640 samples, somewhere around there. It ought to be enough for anybody, but yeah, I kind of bought this for IR. I was hoping it would have a longer IR, but it's like a super short IR kind of a thing. It only does the 12 milliseconds of it, so that's kind of a shame. So okay, we'll turn that off. We'll go to the amp thing. The amp thing is distortion-based effects. There's a Tweety, and yeah, these are model apparently real effect. That's the super clean one. What is that? JC110. Okay, that's a jazz chorus kind of a thing, which is a totally clean app. So yeah, there's no distortion on that one. But you can see there's different distortion models on here, kind of a thing, and as is reduced, it goes down, kind of a thing. It goes up, kind of thing. I'm just changing the volume going into the effect. So, and these are all just traditional amp model, programmer kind of based amp model kind of thing. And this is without a cabinet on. You know, normally you would run this through a cabinet. So let me just do that real quick. Turn the cabinet on. Just over here. So yeah, you can see everything's kind of going through the cabinet now. But all right, yeah, typical kind of a thing. But then we go to something a little more interesting. This is the neural amp model. Unfortunately, you can't run the amp and neural amp model together. So when you turn it on, it basically does this to the other two. So okay, so neural amp model distortion kind of a thing here. So sort of the same kind of a thing. In fact, I'll change this view a little bit. I'll show harmonics to like 7 kind of a thing. So when you read this bottom thing, is this the first order harmonic, and the second's in green, and the third's in red, and then fourth's in blue. Basically, cold colors for even, the warm colors for odd harmonics kind of thing. So it just makes it a little easier when you're looking at this. So yeah, I don't know. It looks like a normal kind of a thing here. This thing does do some interesting stuff too. I've seen it generate some interesting changes, but right now it's just kind of acting weird. Well, this is a weird one. This is pretty much clean. As I said, this thing distorts. It distorts at negative 24 dB, so this is practically clean kind of a thing because you're not going to hear a red that's too low. That's a Foxy 30. I don't know what that model's. It's weird because, they try to sell you on this idea that, this model is going to sound exactly like the real thing, but the reality, it sounds like itself. It doesn't really sound like the real thing, but you can put a nice picture of the real object and associated with the effect kind of a thing. I don't know. It's weird. But one thing I did notice about this too, this also suffers from a 12 millisecond kind of a thing going on here. So it seems like these impulse responses are only, or these neural net models only are affected by 12 milliseconds. So yeah, I had a look at that, and let me pull up a paper real quick. Here's a paper I found online. Swimmable NAM models, neural net modelers with adjustable runtime computational costs. So basically, here's a paper that basically talks about taking a neural net model it's probably typically quite long and shortening it and shortening and shortening to a point and making it easier on runtime computation. So that's how a pedal like this can run neural amp miles, because it doesn't run the whole neural amp miles. It runs the first quarter of the neural amp mile, or the first eighth of it. I'm not sure how long a typical NAM model is. I guess I could test it. I could just do loopbacks and stuff like that. But anyways, so yeah, that's the neural amp model effects kind of a thing. What else can we look at? I'll turn that off. I guess we could just turn on the distortion and see what that does. So you got green OD, yellow OD, super OD, small distortion kind of things. And once again, these are all just models and stuff like that. They're supposedly models of the real thing, and they sort of are, they sort of aren't. I don't know. You, it is what it is, kind of a thing. So, what else can we look at? I guess we can look at the reverb and stuff like that, just because it looks cool on the spectrum analyzer. All right, turn the reverb on, and move over to synchro. Yeah, it went all gray on me. All right, there's spectro. No, it's a synchro thing. Excuse me. There we go. So the reverb in here, it didn't seem all that dense to me, and you can kind of see they're not all that dense. It's kind of a thing. Yeah, I'm not sure about the hot pink. I guess I changed the colors around. Um, yeah, so we'll just use this room reverb. Got like a mix kind of a thing, so we can turn it up a little bit, add more decay, less decay kind of a thing. Trail, I don't know. Um, Pretty much it. They're passable kind of things for reverb, but it's sparsy to me, to my ears, kind of a thing. Yeah, that's the review. Let's take a look at this thing as an audio interface. So, okay, after messing around with this as an audio interface for a bit, I kind of came to the conclusion that it loops the input to the output, and there's some sort of loop back on here. I went into all the various things, and whenever I put the record level up at any level whatsoever, input level has to go all the way down, and then it'll settle down. But yeah, there's some sort of loop back on here, so it's just not going to be a valid. I can't do any valid tests as far as an audio interface because there's a funny loop back in this circuit. I don't know what to say.